Hello, everyone, and welcome to Piloting the Future, brought to you by Energy Central and Innovation Force, where we're going deep with the leaders, innovators, and forward thinkers responsible for not just imagining where our power future is headed, but they're building it day by day. In each episode, we'll go beyond the headlines to hear from industry insiders and bold, game-changing innovators to separate the hype from reality. Hi there, Lee. I'm so excited. This is the last episode of our first season of Piloting the Future. Can you believe it? The time went by so fast.
It did. It's been a great run, but I'm more excited now about the second season, which is coming up soon.
Yeah, so we'll be back by popular demand, and it's been a really, really rich season. I mean, we've covered all sorts of topics with all sorts of innovators. We've talked about how to innovate better with utilities coming on, which has been great. We've had some amazing solution providers that have shared not only all the cool technology they're building, but how to go and deploy this. Like, we're ready to deploy. So I think it's been a really good ride so far.
Yeah, I think if it's one thing that we've learned, that we've all learned, is good ideas and even good products are a lot easier than getting them through the pilot stage to take off, to deployment. A lot of great products never make it to success because it's so hard to get through that stage.
It really is. And so I hope if this podcast is providing those utilities out there a little bit of help in getting to know some of these solvers, how they're solving, and building the credibility of just like, there's no need to pilot forever. Like, we're ready to go on this technology. And for the sake of the grid, we need it now. And so that leads me into what I like to talk about lately in the last couple of sessions, Lee, is the grid affordability and modernization report that we put out. Our next solver that we're going to cover today actually covers two of our top trends that we found. So after analyzing 6,000 challenges down to the top 10 needs, this solver actually is a resiliency play that can help drive not only better resiliency when it comes to extreme weather, wildfires, protection around that first threat that we saw, but also the aging infrastructure. So it's a twofer. You're going to get a lot of value for the price of one in this solution. And we're really excited to be exploring what AI could be doing to streamline inspections and enhance asset monitoring and prediction. And Lee, I think you did a lot of this when you were at San Diego Gas and Electric.
We were, I believe, the first utility to actually use drones to do inspections, and it was quite a challenge. It hadn't been done before, so we kind of had to invent the rules. I was at San Diego Gas and Electric, and very proud of the work that we did there starting this. But now there's a lot of solutions. Back then, you kind of had to roll your own, and I'm really glad to see that AI is now being leveraged in this important space.
Exactly. So today we're going to explore what AI can do for you. So fasten your seatbelts. It's time to explore what happens when AI innovation drives ideas to impact with Buzz Solutions.
And I'm going to introduce our guests. First, we have Caitlin Albertoli, CEO and co-founder of Buzz Solutions, and Tom Lenzen of ESRI, not ESRI, like I used to be told to say it back in the day. He's infrastructure industry team specialist for imagery and remote sensing. Welcome, Caitlin. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
This will be fun.
Yeah, excited to have you on Piloting the Future. Caitlin, can you tell us more about Buzz Solutions, how to get started, and why did you want to solve this challenge to improve grid inspections?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an exciting time to be in the space. I loved your introduction about utilities and AI and grid modernization, affordability. I mean, all of these are really big topics that we're grappling with in the utility space. So we launched Buzz Solutions in 2017, which seems quite old in terms of AI and the conversation with utilities to help utilities manage and analyze their inspection data. So we launched from a Launchpad course at Stanford University, where we recognized many utilities were starting to collect a lot more data, whether it was with drones, whether it was with high zoom, high resolution cameras for helicopters, fixed wing aircrafts, static cameras, you name it, but the data collection was skyrocketing. And we were speaking with dozens of utilities who were in that early phase of planning how they were going to be doing more inspection data collection. But what came to be a really common narrative that we would hear is these utilities were collecting a lot more data, but they were trying to figure out a better way to manage the data and analyze it efficiently. Oftentimes, they would be collecting 5 to 10x the amount of imagery, but they had the same teams of people on the back end trying to analyze the images and make sense of that data, turning it into actionable information. And so where we launched Buzz was to help those utilities streamline that process of data management and analysis with pre-trained machine learning and computer vision algorithms, really AI at its core. And so we spent 3 years just building the algorithms and training them before we commercially launched into the utility market in 2020. So have spent the better part of 5 years working with many utilities across the US for their inspections and maintenance needs.
And can you talk about how you impact transmission, distribution, substations from an inspection perspective?
Yes, definitely. So we ingest data collected from a variety of different visual sources, whether that's drone data, helicopter data, as I was mentioning, fixed wing data. We help utilities ingest and centralize those data sets that are collected. And then we analyze those with our machine learning and computer vision algorithms. So we have algorithms that are all vision based. They are trained on a variety of different types of asset detections, such as identifying all components on transmission towers, distribution poles, and substation infrastructure. And then we also have condition based detections as well, looking at the health of those components. So we're looking at, insulator damages, such as flashing of insulators, contamination, broken insulators. We're looking at things like rusting on towers or on the joints of towers. We're looking at distribution poles like wood pole cap problems or pole rot or woodpecker holes. And then in substations, we're also looking for thermal detections like overheating of components or any sorts of failures on transformers themselves. And then we're helping utilities prioritize all those maintenance requests so they can ultimately streamline their path of conducting maintenance faster. And all of the imagery that we work with, we actually work very closely with ESRI to map all of the structures and update the asset locations and to update the equipment that's deployed on all of those assets themselves so that utilities who are living and breathing inside their ESRI ecosystem, they can have better insights pushed back into that platform, all driven by the inspection data they're collecting.
You mentioned woodpecker holes, so it makes me, of course, think of Grid Wrap. You should definitely talk to them if you haven't already. They have this amazing solution to wrap poles that are failing, overweighted, or woodpecker problems, or any kind of problems, really. It'd be great if you find them and they fix them.
Yes, absolutely. It's a huge problem, as we see on many distribution poles and wood assets across the board, is woodpecker holes, pole splitting, all of the things that are, they may look like small issues, but they actually can have huge impacts to the structural integrity of the asset.
Absolutely.
I was going to say we could give a quick shout out to EPRI, Incubate Energy Labs, because Grid Wrap, Buzz Solutions, and Innovation Force all came out of EPRI, Incubate Energy Labs, and I almost think it was the same year. So there you go. We're all mature and in the market now, and look at the amazing work like the team's doing. So yay.
Yeah, that program is great.
I love the synergy in the industry. Everything really works together. Pretty awesome. What does a typical pilot look like, or a specific pilot? How do you get started with a utility?
It's a great question. A big topic of conversation for us is meeting utilities where they're at today. We see many utilities are in various stages of their building their inspection programs, whether they're working with third-party data collectors, whether they're trying to build an in-house drone program, whether they're fully on-premise in the cloud. There's so many different stages that utilities are at, whether they're on the utility network today or not. There are so many different stages of where utilities are on this innovation journey. and in their inspection journey. And so at Buzz, we're big on meeting utilities where they're at today, helping plug in to solve small problems or big problems they may have in a focused fashion on day one. So oftentimes we'll start a pilot program working with historical data that they've already collected. Perhaps it's a data set that was collected for forestry purposes, but now they recognize they have this huge capital improvement project, like upgrading their insulators, that they need to solve for today. Instead of going out and investing in collecting all new data, perhaps they can leverage a pre-existing data set they have and get more value from it today. So oftentimes we'll start saying, okay, what is the biggest pain point that you're trying to solve? Maybe they have an over inundation of images they've collected, and it's a wildfire time of year, and they quickly need to analyze those data sets. Or maybe it is, like I was saying before, a capital project where they need to identify the location of all of their insulators. Whatever it may be, we'll pick something really small and focused and specific, and then we'll help the utility ingest that data, analyze it quickly, and then we'll push it into those pre-existing platforms they already have deployed today. So whether that's a asset management platform, whether it's a work management system, or whether it's into their pre-existing GIS, we found that being able to work with the utility workflow is oftentimes how we can get faster success in a pilot, and we can get the utility really simulating what it would be like to deploy this type of solution at scale. This isn't a third-party platform that you have to go train all of your linemen and field technicians on. By getting buy-in with the existing workflow they have and just enhancing it with new technologies, we found that can be something more successful in helping the pilot advance forward.
Integrating into existing systems is huge, because otherwise it's just another system that they have to train on and integrate themselves. That can be the most difficult part of a project.
Yes, and I think you see oftentimes, especially in inspections, a lot of these linemen and field technicians and subject matter experts that we're working with have been doing the same inspection process for 10, 20, 30 years. And so we want to bring enhanced technology like AI, machine learning, computer vision to help enhance the insights being driven in that inspection, while also keeping the process as similar as possible for that subject matter expert. We like to say at the end of the day, the lineman and field technician is still the person making the decision, but instead of having to manually sift through hundreds of thousands and millions of images, we can help them just have to look at the critical issues that are flagged by the AI, and they can make the recommendation on where to conduct maintenance and when to send a truck roll.
You don't have to answer this next question if you don't have an answer, but I'm just interested. Can you talk about a successful pilot?
Absolutely. So one of our successful pilots, very similar to what I was mentioning earlier, was with Dominion Energy on the transmission side of things. They had a historical forestry data set that they'd collected with helicopters, and it was of 47,000 transmission structures. They had an upcoming capital project where they recognized that certain insulators were failing faster than other insulators. They recognized their polymer insulators were failing faster than their porcelain insulators. And they wanted to go through a polymer replacement program where they were going to replace all of those polymer insulators with porcelain. The problem was they didn't know where all of their polymer or porcelain insulators were deployed across those 47,000 structures. And so instead of sending out crews to go collect more data, or instead of deploying their engineers and linemen and field technicians to look through the forestry data set, which would have taken an immense amount of time, they said, what if we can use Buzz to help streamline that process, to give us the insights we need in a faster fashion? And so that's what we did. We were able to analyze those 47,000 structures in about 10 hours for them with our machine learning computer vision algorithms. And we were able to do so with above 90% accuracy. We were able to inventory all of their porcelain, polymer, and glass insulators from that data set. And so that was a successful pilot that was working with pre-existing data they'd already collected. One thing that was interesting there too is, of course, we can't get down to the condition assessment of those insulators or more granular detection types, but it certainly is an example of how you can leverage data which may have been collected by a different team, but of those same assets, and still continue to see value from it, meaning they already made the investment to collect those images. How can they continue to see value from that across different parts of the organization?
I love that, because we know all about the affordability lately. So imagine being able to get all this additional value out of what you've already collected and that it only took 10 hours to analyze it so you could do something about it. So I'm just excited to hear how you all are not just like enhancing your algorithms, but how you've thought about deployment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think going back to the other piece on that workflow side of things as well, what we've done in a lot of our pilot programs is then we'll push those insights directly back into platforms they already have in place. Oftentimes you'll see, okay, well, this pilot generated a ton of new insights and data, but now what do we do with it? How can we make more than just the one report that's the output? How can we actually push those insights into the platforms where it's relevant? And oftentimes we'll see that that piece of just manually updating data sets can take huge amounts of time for the utility themselves. And so that's where partnering with organizations like ESRI has been highly valuable for us, because then we can have a bi-directional flow of information. So the utility can then see the insights directly in the platforms that they're already accustomed to working with, and they can break down that data siloing barrier while also introducing new technology more efficiently.
As Esri, I'll add to what Caitlin just mentioned, because it is a common theme that we've seen across all utilities, and that is having an accurate representation of your assets in the field, which leads to, better resiliency and better understanding of where your issues may be and keeping things up to speed. But just that whole capability of going out and collecting data around the digital as-built version of your facilities brings great insight to a lot of operations, because you have to remember that their data in GIS or asset management typically has been collected over 30 or 40 years. And some of those processes weren't as efficient as maybe they should have been in the early days. So with automation, AI, this ability to collect imagery and now bring that component and the understanding of the equipment you're looking at, the pole condition you're looking at, back to a real position, a real location, a real focused location within the circuit helps every operation get more efficient, be safer, be able to address issues when storms come up. So it addresses a lot of other business needs that an operation has. So it's very, very powerful, the path that this is on.
Yeah, we've talked about insulators, we've talked about poles, and now you're talking about nailing down where the location is. What are other ways that utilities are leveraging imaging?
So imaging is being used, as Caitlin's been talking about, for the inspection side, right? So inspections, audits, those kinds of things, which are typically single images. We call them oriented images, but they have one thing that's inherent in any imagery that's taken is it has a location or a geospatial location. It has a timestamp, and it has an association to the equipment it's looking at. And all of those are foundational components to GIS. So what we're seeing is folks are leveraging GIS to manage the individual images that are taken for inspections. But more importantly, you have a wide variety of other things that imagery has been used for within the utility space. Examples are, for the last 20 to 30 years, people have used a digital ortho or ortho image of their service territory, which gives them an accurate representation of everything that's going on with and around their infrastructure, whether it's a right-of-way or it's a local distribution grid. It gives you the foundation that you need for that. And as we are moving now into the future, we're seeing more and more. In fact, we had a conference just a couple of weeks ago where this was a very, very prominent topic, the ability to see things in 3D. So now you have sensors that are collecting data. So you now have a full 3D mesh, as they call it, of your infrastructure with accurate representations of everything related to the electric circuit, whether it's transmission, substations, distribution, or even the land management around it. That imagery becomes an important focal point for understanding what's happening in and around all of your facilities in the field.
We used to have a problem at San Diego Gas and Electric where one group would have access to certain data, but another group wouldn't have that access. They had different data, and the real value would be in putting that data together. Are you seeing data siloing still as a problem, or are utilities beginning to overcome that? You're laughing.
I
You're
will,
laughing.
I will say that they are starting to overcome that, but it is still very much an issue. And part of that is, you think about it, utilities, there are certain departments that have high security requirements, right? So they don't share their data even internally a lot. But the reality is what we're seeing more and more by bringing multiple departments in a room and talking about an asset management strategy that covers the entire organization. And Caitlin's very aware of this. We're involved in a number of these where, from the standpoint of the overall operation, Dominion's one of them. They're actually building a program now where imagery, remote sensing, LiDAR point clouds are all an asset for the organization. And that asset allows them now to share that across all departments with the motto of have a strategy so you can collect data once and you can support multiple business areas. In today's world, they've all been siloed, to your point, right? So in fact, I've seen numerous times where 5 or 4 departments fly the exact same corridor, collecting data for what they're worried about. One's veg management, one's pole condition, one's equipment, right? And instead, now they're able to start to think about collecting that data. And it's still hundreds of thousands or millions of images, but collect that data with the purpose of supporting all your business areas. So that is starting to happen.
We ran the SEI capability maturity model out of Carnegie Mellon when I was with SDG&E. And that was really the first time, it must have been 15, 20 years ago, but it got everybody in the same room from different areas. And that was the first time that they started talking and realizing that they could really work together to improve the bottom line.
It's interesting. I've been working in the utility space for ESRI for 23 years. I did utility work before then, but I'm just amazed at how many times we've gotten in a room and finally gotten multiple departments in a room, and they all start sharing and going, oh, well, we're using the same data for this and for that. And some of them have spent millions of dollars on the exact same data for each department. And you go, time to quit doing that. Let's be smarter about the way you're working across the operation.
Yeah, don't tell the commission that. They'll be very upset.
Yeah. No,
the impact to rates.
Exactly.
And I will say, and I'm going to give another shout out for AEIC, Association for Edison Illuminating Companies, and Liz, Dr. Liz Elizabeth Cook. She is working a lot on this issue and the operations and how to be able to do a better job of cross-coordinating, collaborating with data. Doing a lot of amazing work in this area. So just give her a shout out, because I think she would love this story, as well as their members would love this story. But it's all about like reducing silos and barriers. And we see that all the time in innovation as well. Teams should be knowing that they're working on the same projects, and they would have a lot more efficiency there.
Yeah, and I think Kim, that also touches on this point of affordability. And these are easy ways to gain, both operational efficiencies and also reduce unnecessary duplicative spend at the utility as well. But also helping drive even greater insights, because being able to bring, multiple of these departments together and break down some of that data siloing also unlocks multiple conversations that could be had at one time, reduce truck rolls, and the list kind of goes on from an operational improvement standpoint. But it's also just quick wins for affordability as well.
It seems that there are so many valuable things you can do, right? There's so many use cases that add value here. How do you communicate to utilities that you can really help make this a reality? And I'll ask both of you to comment on that.
We're doing the best we can to communicate that as much as possible. It is one of those things where it has to happen at the executive level for them to really truly understand it. Because if you might be talking to even a senior director of a particular department, they care about what they're doing in their department, and that's what they worry about first. But if you get up to the VP or the C-suite, they go, yeah, we're trying to figure out how to do this more effectively and get people sharing and collaborating so that we work more efficiently as an operation, right? As an overall operation. So our goal is to do things like we're doing today, to get the message out, to help people understand that this is really, really important. And to Caitlin's point, it actually starts to provide the foundational return on investment that you use to start capitalizing these kinds of efforts, right? Because that's where folks are already starting to go, but that's where they need to go to really take the proper advantage of what's happening in this space.
I completely agree. I think we're seeing now a connection point as well between the executive level conversation, things like reliability, clean energy, affordability, a lot of the in order for those efforts to be successful and in order for us to improve our reliability and increase capacity and modernize the grid, it does come back to upgrading the physical infrastructure itself. Grid modernization is at the core of being able to achieve some of these bigger strategic goals. And imagery, by collecting imagery, by continuing to use the imagery on an ongoing basis, and by bringing it into the fold to make it a part of this broader story, it also connects with the linemen and boots on the ground, engineers, planners, field technicians. And so it really is that central point that people can relate to at different parts of the utility. And now we're seeing that connection between these big strategic initiatives and actually what happens physically in the field. And imagery is an easy way for us all to relate to that story because I think historically you would see imagery would be collected, analyzed, a report would be drafted, and then maybe it would go into someone's desk. Maybe it would be, put on a hard drive, or one report would be filed away, used one time for one purpose. But now by making, this imagery more of a living, continuous, I guess worlds that we can live in through the digital twin or through more of these continuously updating models, we can start to see value from the imagery itself in many parts of the organization. And that is going to, I think, catapult us into a whole other world of ROI from building and scaling these imagery programs.
So you've talked a lot about the transformative nature of the technology and what it can do for the utility. Where are you in 5 years? What's next?
That's a great question. I really feel like imagery as a whole is just scratching the surface, and where we're at on the analytics side, we are just scratching the surface of use cases. As you mentioned, Lee, too, how are we thinking about use cases, because there are so many. I think it's how can you prioritize use cases today that are going to provide the biggest impact, and work with utilities on their next 3 and 5 year plans for grid modernization, reliability. As Tom mentioned too, more of a programmatic approach to thinking about remote sensing and imagery, where you can bring that into one program that you're building out. I'm excited that many utilities on the innovative side, like the Dominions of the world, PG&Es and some others, are building this programmatic approach today. But I think 3 to 5 years, that's going to become, and I hope it becomes more of a commonplace. I hope that we can templatize this now so that then it sets many other utilities up for a more efficient path to building these similar types of programs.
Yeah, I'll add to Caitlin's points in that from a technology standpoint, you're already seeing this happen. More and more people are moving to that 3D digital twin representation of their infrastructure. It's happening at the substation level. It's happening at the high voltage transmission level. It's happening in areas where you've got a complex network of distribution circuits. So those kinds of things are happening, and you're going to see that trend continue. And what that does is it sets the foundation and a very accurate, dependable, and trustworthy foundation for doing the more sophisticated inspections and analytics against the equipment that sits on the poles, or the equipment that is in the substations, those kinds of things, right? Where you're going to get more and more automation. Once you have a very, very trusted foundation, all of those other things start to fall in line in terms of automation, ability to address proactive approaches to preventing outages and issues and those kinds of things, because you're staying on top of the equipment and the exact location and where it's at. And in GIS, we also talk about the fact that you're also looking at the comprehensive situation. So it's the vegetation in that area. How many times does it flood? What kind of traffic does it get? What are the air conditions? Is it salt water, or is it smoggy, or is it, all the things that can potentially impact equipment are all taken into consideration in that comprehensive view in 3D. You're going to see more of that. And the other piece that I'll talk about that I think is really important, it's coming at us very quickly, is the whole beyond line of sight ability with drones. So BV loss, as they call it. It's going to be important to have a strategy in place for the way you're doing that. And if you have a sound foundation, you can now do the proper planning. You can understand where you want to take your images so that you can leverage amazing tools that Buzz has put together to identify equipment, identify issues, identify changes, and understand the path that you're on as you continue to modify and improve the resiliency and harden your grid.
I'm so glad. Maybe I could add to that. I'm so glad you mentioned that BVLOS piece of it, and that the drone in the box, the drone dock solutions, even the ground-based rovers that you're seeing deployed at facilities and substations. It's unlocking a world where imagery and data is being collected so much more consistently, and being able to feed that into a 3D digital twin is constantly updating that model. So the single source of truth is continuing to be updated as well. So no longer are you in a world where it's just a cycle-based inspection where maybe once every 3 or once every 5 years you're flying all your infrastructure. I mean, now you can have a more targeted and proactive approach on where you're continuously doing inspections, and it opens up a whole other world of possibilities. But it's really exciting to think that you can look at your most risk-prone areas, perhaps put a drone dock there, and you're doing more continuous inspections. Then you know exactly where to send that maintenance crew to conduct more targeted inspections. You can have eyes on that particular site, or those towers or that feeder, on a much more consistent basis, so you can prepare more effectively pre-storm or pre-wildfire, and then you can restore power faster in a post-storm environment as well. So being able to have access to more consistent and continuous data sets, and being able to feed that into a single source of truth like a digital twin, just allows for much more informed, data-driven decisions.
I'm gonna add one more piece of technology or trend that is really, really important to all this, and that is the back end architecture. 15 years ago, Lee, when you were working at SDG&E, you weren't going to be able to do a lot with 3D because it had to be a super station, workstation, and there was one person who could do that work and that kind of thing. And in today's world, we're set up so that they're flying through 3D image data of an entire, county or major metropolitan area or the entire service territory of an electric utility, because you have the horsepower to do it, and you have the applications that are more sophisticated, web applications like we've provided now for our customers that allow people to understand and get to those locations very quickly. And we have people managing 45 million plus images, and they have 1 second access to any of that data when they need it. You'd have tried to do that 15 years ago, probably wasn't doable. So technology is evolving now to make all of these things much more achievable and much more cost effective in terms of the way you're doing your work.
Yeah, that is a great segue to the Visionaries Take. And so this is the part of the podcast where I like to say we cut through the BS and we get straight to the point of what is it going to take to drive this transformation. Because I think, Tom, that was awesome what you were saying about what was holding us back on the computer side. And now all this is available. So for both of you, what do you think is holding utilities back from this type of transformation? And in particular, in the world of AI, are you seeing headwinds there? Are utilities nervous about the adoption because they don't trust AI yet? Or potentially, and I've seen this, maybe there's some digital transformation teams out there that are trying to build their own in-house AI, to replicate, Caitlin, all those amazing algorithms that you guys have been fine-tuning since 2017. Like, wouldn't it just make more sense to use a wider industry adopted sort of approach to this? So I'm curious, how could we get more utilities to embrace this faster? Because we need it now.
Well, that was quite an easy question, wasn't it?
Feel free to answer whatever part of it you want.
And we want that answer in 7 words.
Usual. I made it a little longer than usual, so feel free to answer whatever piece of it you want.
That's an awesome question. And it's really, I think we see utilities have so much coming at them at one time too. So you're talking about electrifying, onboarding renewables, moving to the cloud, bringing in AI, you're talking about how to streamline processes with tightening O&M budgets. It's a lot that utilities are up against today. And so technology and automation are two great ways to help unlock a bigger strategic goals that the utility is trying to achieve. Maybe to talk about the AI piece of it, I'd say 5 years ago, we saw a lot more hesitancy and skepticism around AI. But I think as you've seen things like, ChatGPT and other, AI based tools being brought into our personal lives, our daily lives, it's opened up a world where we can see how bringing AI as a more integrated part of our daily life and our workflow can be a really additive tool. And I want to be clear to say AI is not here to, especially in our world, replace jobs. In a lot of times, it's the insights that we're deriving from visual inspections are actually creating more work. It's creating a lot more work that needs to be done on upgrading the systems and modernizing the infrastructure. But AI is meant to be a tool to streamline more of the mundane, repetitive processes. And so now that we've seen AI be brought into, our daily lives, I think we've seen more of an openness of people to engaging with that. But certainly there is, I think, a lot of skepticism and fear of how it's going to impact their daily workflow, whether it's, the process they've been doing with inspections for the last 20 or 30 years in analyzing images or analyzing data and drafting reports. Now parts of that are being taken by AI to help enable more, I guess you should say, efficient inspection analysis. But I do want to say again, it's not meant to be a tool that ever replaces the subject matter expert in this equation. It's just meant to help fast track the process for the more repetitive data analysis. And I think we're seeing a lot more openness to that. And the reason we've seen more openness to it, aside from, as I was mentioning, AI being integrated into, other parts of our lives, we also see now that there is so much work to be done on the modernization piece and the system upgrade side. And it's having to be done with the same crews, but it's so much more work that's coming quite quickly. And so how can we use tools like automation, such as maybe a drone in the box or a drone that's coming along with you on a truck roll, as a tool that can help enhance your inspection and analysis process? So I would say we're certainly seeing a lot more openness to it. When it comes to the how are we seeing utilities, I guess what's holding them back from a transformation standpoint, I would go back to that data siloing piece of it. I do think data siloing today is a current challenge we see in that transformation. Part of this data sharing, part of that is cybersecurity, data governance protocols. How do we interact with some of this data across different parts of the organization? And so we're seeing that's also starting to change now, but certainly in our time that we've been around, we've seen that be a challenge. And it's held back some innovation.
Tom, any thoughts?
I would agree with Caitlin on all points. I'll maybe enhance a couple things. One is, for the last 23 years working with utilities, they're always risk adverse, right? They're always like, I want to make sure somebody else has done this first. So there's that adoption rate that tends to be a little slower at first, but once it's accepted, and we're seeing this with imagery and with 3D and those kinds of things. Once they see an operation or two or three that are already doing this, everybody jumps on board if it's proven out. Everybody has the same problems. They don't have as many staff as they used to. Things are more sophisticated. The grid needs to be enhanced because of all the new innovations and things that are happening with EVs and data warehouses and those kinds of things, pushing the grids to perform at a much higher rate than they ever have before in the electric space. So all of those things are forcing them to be smarter about what they do. Caitlin mentioned subject matter experts. There's actually a greater need for those kinds of people because they understand the electric engineering side of it, and they understand the dynamics of ultimately how they're serving their customers, and they're trying to be more innovative about the way they support those roles. So you need more subject matter experts to help AI be smarter. I think the other piece of that is everybody didn't know, 5 years ago, everybody went, oh, AI, that's going to replace my job. So there's this complete misunderstanding of where the technology is going. The reality is it's going to be playing a role that enhances the personnel and their abilities to address the business problems that they have. It's just helping them walk down that path to understand how that really works and where it can benefit them. So that's a big part of what we're trying to do is help people on that path that they're on.
Yeah. Heard a great quote. Fear not the AI. Fear the person that's learning how to use AI better than you.
That's a good one. That's a good
That
one.
is a good one.
I would maybe do a call to action right now on the podcast for those of you who are listening. This would be a great opportunity to call Buzz Solutions and find out what they are doing with AI, because I think it's a great opportunity for you to see a really good application, a useful application of AI that is going to save everyone a ton of money and time. And it's a tool that you can learn to actually get better at your job so that you can create maybe a little bit of job protection for yourself.
Another call to action, they should call you, Kim, because Innovation Force also uses AI to match solutions with problems. It's perfect.
And they should call ESRI as well. Call ESRI for all of your mapping and central data needs. I mean, that is oftentimes a common foundation where we see utilities need to start, is making sure you have proper asset locations, because without that, you're not able to bring AI into the fold effectively and be able to get the proper insights that you want to drive from it, or to be able to take the right action on it as well.
Bad data in, bad data out. Yeah.
My call to action would be, to Caitlin's point, we provide a framework and a capability that all utilities across the world are leveraging day in and day out, right? We're continuing to improve and evolve as technology evolves. But we do not see success unless we have critical business partners like Buzz Solutions involved in that, because what they do is they bring that level of expertise in that can help actually streamline the ability to work on top of our framework. So we're internally grateful, always grateful for the kinds of work that Buzz does for our customers and how they help them, provide more efficient methodologies around the day-to-day inspection and analytics that need to happen to be a smart utility customer.
Yeah, another way to avoid the turbulence of not being first is, Tom, to what you're saying. I mean, ESRI is a trusted name in the industry. They're validating, right, Buzz Solutions to say that this is beyond, piloting stage. Like, this is the real deal.
Absolutely.
My last question, and the visionaries take around the BS and the turbulence, I think, is more around getting started with a pilot. Do you see any turbulence with because we've talking about data silos. I just wanted to say #silos suck. It's probably the biggest piece of the turbulence.
Start using that.
You want to talk about being more efficient. How do we cross collaborate, leverage crowd wisdom? Is it hard to get started with a pilot because they have to decide what data to share and data privacy and all that? Help me walk through that piece of the turbulence.
It's a great question. We actually see that this is getting a lot better when it comes to starting pilots. So when we launched Buzz, at that time, utilities were standing up these innovation teams. And these innovation teams were meant to help the utilities understand where the business units had problem areas or problem statements that they wanted to find solutions for. And while that was great, what we often saw was, if you ran a pilot with an innovation team, it wouldn't necessarily translate into a larger scale adoption. Why? Some of the biggest problems we saw were there wasn't true business unit buy-in early on in the piloting program. And so there were hurdles that hadn't been considered as a part of the pilot to ultimately then get to scaling. Some of that was, who's going to own this long term? Who is going to work through the integrations piece of it? Where are we going to get the resources, the time to bring this into the fold? What are the risks that we're going to see in order to get this to scale? And one thing I'd say I've seen really change probably in the last 2 to 3 years in many utilities we're working with is either A, they, in order to run a pilot, have to have business unit buy-in, or B, these innovation folks are being more integrated into the business units themselves. And I think part of that's being driven by the need from the business units to find quick fixes. But part of it's also, I think, being driven by some of these larger programmatic transitions you're seeing, like even the drone teams and the inspection teams being integrated with the business units themselves. Drone teams, sometimes at the utility, can be a central team, but oftentimes there are placed pilots in each business unit. And those pilots at the business units are saying, hey, we need to consider the whole workflow process here. And that's where we need new technology to come into the fold. So we've seen advanced technology teams being stood up, which have business unit buy-in, which also have IT buy-in, which also have a framework in place for how to evaluate this new solution and then bring it to a more scaled approach. And maybe, Kim, going back to your other question earlier about the buy versus builds, we're also seeing that rubric being formed as a part of that pilot. Okay, what needs to be checked off in order for us to evaluate, is it worth bringing in a vendor here to help support this program, or are we going to have more of an ROI by building this in-house ourselves? And that's something we're just starting to see change, but I've really been picking up on this the last probably 2 or 3 years in the industry, and we're seeing it lead to much more, I guess you'd say, streamlined adoption of new technologies, because there is someone that's owning this, and then they've de-risked more parts of the technology earlier in the piloting phase.
You just basically summed up my latest white paper called Getting Out of Pilot Purgatory. So absolutely.
Great. Well, I will look forward to reading it.
All right. Hey, I would like both of you, actually all three of you, to answer these questions in 30 seconds or less, if you can. In 5 years, the biggest challenge for utilities will be...
Tom, you want to start us off?
The biggest challenge will be supporting all the new build out that's happening with data centers and new modernized electric vehicle locations and sophisticated distribution networks that need to support a much broader use case, meaning a much higher load requirement.
That was going to be my answer as well. was grid modernization. It's certainly a big problem that we're seeing, is being able to increase capacity enough to manage the significant amount of load that's coming onto the grid. But I'll also say that the workforce challenges, being able to have enough labor resources to meet that demand, to be able to upgrade the systems that we need and electrify at the rates that we'd like to.
Lee, since we talk so much about it, I'm going to say data silos today.
They're all good answers, but the answer is rates. They're too high. And those problems are going to multiply it. All right, next question. I don't really say that I know the answer. The one thing about AI that no one talks about, but should, and this time, Caitlin, let's start with you.
Sure. I'd say in order for AI to be successful, we've talked about it a lot today, it's bringing it into the workflow. It's making it an integrated part of your daily process. I think that's oftentimes we talk about AI replacing the job or AI, taking over, but I think we should be talking more about how can we bring AI into an integrated part of our daily lives, so we're helping AI become a workforce multiplier and help us get more value and efficiency with the people that we have today.
And I will say that because it's still very new in its nature, you want to have a trusted advisor that can walk you through the paces to do this the right way, like a Buzz Solutions, because it's very important to understand the importance of the data models and the workflows and the most effective way to leverage AI to do the work that you need to do.
Kim?
It's here to stay.
I'll tell you what it is. It's that everybody has a different level of knowledge around AI, and it's really causing the haves and the have-nots, as a lot of people are ignoring it and others are becoming experts. That's going to be a big issue.
Yes.
That's great. That's a great point.
This is the last one. A myth about AI that you would like to bust.
That you can't use it yourself in your job. Yeah. Start learning it. Start figuring it out. My gosh, go on YouTube, watch a video. It's really not that hard to start upskilling yourself to be prepared for this future.
I'm going to say that it's going to do everything. I don't think AI is going to do everything. I think that it only creates more importance on the work that needs to be done by the physical people that are here to do it, the subject matter experts that are here to do it.
And I would add to that and say that it's going to replace you in your job, because it's not. It's going to enhance your ability to do your job.
And I think my final word on that is going to be that as much as it already does that people don't even know yet, what it's going to be able to do is beyond what we can conceive. So I don't want to make any statements about job safety, because I just don't know it's improving so fast. Kim, wrap us up.
All righty. This was a great one. This was a great way to end season 1. So thank you so much to our guests, Buzz Solutions, ESRI, Caitlin, and Tom. This was awesome. To everybody listening, if you found this conversation helpful or inspiring, please share your own bold prediction, tag Innovation Force on LinkedIn, share someone who you think should be maybe in our season 2 of Piloting the Future. You never know, we might just call them up and ask them to be the next guest on our show. And of course, if you were inspired by what you heard today, please go and check out Buzz Solutions, check out ESRI, and of course, you're always welcome to check out Innovation Works. Come into the hangar. Buzz Solutions is there. We've matched them to a bunch of really amazing challenges that y'all are facing. And you're always welcome to download our white papers on grid affordability, top 10 challenges, your roadmap for innovating in 2026. And soon to be released, How to Get Out of Pilot Purgatory.
Innovate, innovate, innovate.
Lee, this one has come in for a landing.